So hi everyone, I'm Ellen Zimmerman and I'll be your host for this Foodie Tour webinar. Thank you so much for signing on. We'll be talking about quick pickling with Casey Korn. Casey was born and raised in Santa Monica, California. Upon graduating from Santa Monica High School in 2006, Casey attended Connecticut College, where she found her love of food could be explored academically. She graduated in 2010 after focusing her studies on food anthropology and writing her thesis on olive oil. Returning to Los Angeles, Casey spent 2 years as a latte art award-winning barista at the Cafe Lux in Santa Monica and Brentwood. And in 2012, she was given the opportunity to speak on her thesis at the TEDx Santa Monica Food Series, alongside KCRW's Evan Kleeman and LA chef Marcel Vigernon. The spontaneous trip in a school bus across the US inspired Casey to follow her dreams of traveling and eating, so she headed off to Europe. A stint in Saint-Tropez led to London, where she attended the Cordon Bleu cooking school and received her diploma in cuisine. Still chasing her dreams, Casey moved back to Los Angeles, and after a brief period working as a line chef at Bucato in Culver City, she was hired as Chef Susan Feniger's executive assistant. One invaluable year later, Casey's thirst for culinary adventure flared up, and she jetted off to Southeast Asia and India for a couple of months. In 2016, she returned to Los Angeles in the role of line cook, working at Mead & Company Pasta Bar at Grand Central Market and at Leona in Venice. In 2017, Casey started her own private chef and catering business, the Cornivar, and began working with Tastemade as a tastemaker. At the beginning of 2018, she relocated to New York City and is, of course, still fervently chasing her dreams, the next great meal. Casey will be happy to answer your questions. Click on the Q&A button on your Zoom screen to type them in. And with that, Casey, take it away.
All right, well, welcome everyone to our quick pickling class. I'm going to take you through 3 kinds of quick pickles this afternoon. But the idea behind this is not to give you a direct recipe for any sort of pickles. This is to help you understand how quick pickling works so you can create all your own amazing, unique pickles at home. So feel free at any point to ask any questions. Ellen, jump in and cut me off if need be. I want this to be as interactive as possible. So to that end, let's start talking about pickles. So most people know pickles, like dill pickles, and pickles have been getting more and more popular, especially in the States over the past 10 years, and quick pickles especially. I'm sure everyone's familiar with those beautiful pink red onion pickles that you see on avocado toasts everywhere. We're gonna be making those today. But quick pickling is a really interesting thing because pickling for a long time was just a method of preservation, and you didn't need to be able to eat them immediately. These days, we like to eat our pickles pretty immediately, and so quick pickling sort of emerged as more of a pickling genre to meet that need. So what quick pickling does differently than long-term pickles, when you have those big, beautiful, curvy cucumbers that you're pickling and they have to sit for a month on the shelf, that's not what we're doing today. That uses basically the properties of the curative properties of salt and sugar to draw out the water content of the vegetable that you're pickling, and it forces the vinegar in. And when you're doing these big, huge cucumbers, it just takes a really long time for the curative salt and sugar to get in, and then the water to get out, and then the vinegar to get back in. So quick pickling sort of takes away all the time of that, but using the same techniques. So what we do differently is, instead of doing like a whole cucumber, we slice things very thinly. So if you'll notice, you'll see a lot of those beautiful pink red pickled onions, and they're always really thinly sliced. So I've already actually sliced up my red onions so you didn't have to see me cry on camera. And also because one of the things about pickling onions, I still don't know exactly why this is a thing, but it is. I think it has to do with the fibrousness of onions as well as their really high acidity, is you actually want to salt them ahead of your pickling. So I've got here, I'll come up and show you how thin my onions are sliced. They're real thin, no more than 1/4 inch. If you can do them even thinner, that's better. So the thinness of your vegetable is the thing that's going to allow the pickling to happen so quickly, because the salt and sugar don't need to get so far in, the vinegar doesn't have to get so far in, everything just speeds up a little bit. So what I've done with my red onion, this is just one red onion, is I've sliced it really thin and put it in a bowl with about 1 teaspoon of salt. And that's a pretty good ratio, like 1 onion, regardless of the size, to about 1 teaspoon of salt. What the salt's gonna do is start to draw out some of the moisture in the onions and also help to start breaking down some of the toughness in the onions. So we're gonna let this sit for about 30 minutes. This will be the last pickle we do, and you'll see what happens. So let's get started. First off, let's do some pickled jalapenos. These are a big favorite in my household, partially because pickling liquid is such a valuable thing. You can use it in so many ways. You can put it in vinaigrettes, but our favorite thing is we just drizzle the pickling liquid from the jalapenos onto like tacos and everything and just use it as a hot sauce. It's delicious. So what we're gonna do is you're gonna need like a jar or a heat-safe container, and you're gonna slice your veggie really thinly. So I've got a few more jalapenos to slice. Everyone remind me not to touch my face while I'm doing this. But again, just slicing them no more than 1/4 inch thick. And what we're gonna do essentially is create a hot brine, and that also will help with the speed of pickling. So in brines, what you're creating is you need both vinegar, obviously, as we know, and then you need sugar, more sugar than you would expect. I'm preparing you now, so you can take it in, and by the time we get to the sugar, you'll be prepared. But it's gonna be quite a bit of sugar, because sugar helps balance out the acidity in the vinegar a lot better than just salt alone does. And also because salt is such a seasoning as well, we don't want our pickles to be too salty. So we really rely on sugar to be our curative agent in our quick pickles. And again, what's gonna happen is we're gonna create this brine of salt, sugar, spices, herbs, and vinegar. And then we're gonna bring it up to a boil, and as soon as it's boiling, we're gonna pour it over our vegetables. And as soon as it's cool, the pickles are done. Like, it's really that fast. So we've got a couple more jalapenos going. My personal favorite spices to add to pickles are whole peppercorns. Any variety of peppercorns, I like them all. In fact, I like using a medley because then you get all the great pepper flavors. Garlic, bay leaves, coriander seeds are great. I'm gonna also show you a cool zero waste pickle after this that uses cauliflower stem. And I like to put turmeric with that because the warmth of turmeric is just amazing with the vinegar and all that really like tanginess. So we've got all my jalapenos sliced. Let's start working. Also, I like to keep all the seeds because, as I said, we use this as a hot sauce. If you are not into spicy pickles, take them out. Yeah, so got my stove behind me, and we'll quickly just get our first brine going. So what we're gonna need is, of course, vinegar. I've got a big thing of white wine vinegar here. This is my personal favorite vinegar to use for almost every pickle. It's got just great basic flavor. You can zhuzh it up however you like, but it's just a really solid vinegar. You might need some strong arms over here. You might help me out. All right. It's like my husband on this thing of vinegar. And in the meantime, we'll add everything else. So I've got a couple garlic cloves here. Can you get it? Note to self, always make sure the vinegar's open. So I've got a couple cloves of garlic here for this one, just because it's such a big jar. This doubled up great because we just ran out of pickled jalapenos yesterday. So I'm just gonna give these, still can't get it? Yeah. I've got another box up there if we need to. Anyway, I'm gonna smash my garlic cloves. Just give them a nice crush right into the pot. And I like to do about a tablespoon, you got it? Yeah. My hero. A tablespoon of spices, herbs to about a cup of vinegar, cup and a half of vinegar. So it's sort of, again, it's all sort of, what are you feeling? So anyway, basic pickled jalapenos, got 2 garlic cloves. I've got about 9 to 10 jalapenos. I'm gonna do, since this is a quart jar, you always want to do enough liquid to cover your pickles. If you really, excuse me, jalapenos getting me. If you are really concerned about having enough liquid, you can always top this up so you can see it's covered, and then just strain the liquid into your pot for your brine, just to make sure. But I'm gonna guess about 2 cups for this. And that's gonna go straight into my pot with the garlic cloves. And we're also going to throw in a bay leaf. And I've got about 10 black peppercorns here. You'll sort of start to know 10 is a good place to start with your first pickling. I sometimes go up to like a full tablespoon, which is a lot more than 10, that's like 100. But I really like just to start with a minimum amount of pepper because again, once things go in, you can't take them out. So about 10 peppercorns, 2 garlic cloves, a bay leaf. It's about a teaspoon of sugar, a teaspoon of salt. And I prepared you for this, a 1/4 cup of sugar. I know, it seems like a lot of sugar. But again, this is what is helping the water content in our vegetables be drawn out so that the vinegar, hot vinegar, can force itself in. So we've got our first brine. I'm gonna throw it on the stove. And we're gonna bring it to a quick boil. Just give it a little whisk to dissolve the sugar and the salt. That should be boiled in just a sec. So in the meantime, let's move on to our next pickle, unless there are any questions so far.
Let's see. Okay, questions. Where can you buy such a big container of white wine vinegar for normal home use?
Maybe Costco, but I'm sorry, I got it at a restaurant supply place. I know.
Right.
If you're in New York, email me. Maybe we can work out a deal.
Portions for 1 cup or 2 vinegar. 1 cup vinegar, right? 1 cup or 2.
So for this, just because I have a very large jar, and so I have a lot in there, I'm doing 2 cups. I might not use all of this brine. It's very possible, but I'd always rather have a little extra than too little. But like for these jars, they're pint jars, they're smaller. We're only gonna need like 3/4 of a cup to a cup for these. Because, so a pint is 2 cups, right? But it's gonna be about at least half full of the vegetable, which means you'll only be able to fit about a cup of liquid in there. So it's a little bit of like algebra, math, deciding like the actual amounts, but a good like standard is about a cup of vinegar to about a 1/4 cup of sugar. This we're doing a little less sugar because I just like the jalapenos to be not quite so sweet. We really like the bite of the vinegar in them. But for me, like when I do quick cucumber pickles, I actually do quite a bit of sugar because I really like a sweeter, more bread and butter pickle. Whereas if I'm doing them for my husband, I'll like have the sugar because he does not like a sweet pickle. So again, this is sort of trying to understand, what do you like? And I'm gonna give you some like basics so you can figure out on your own what works for you. And there is a lot of trial and error. I will be the first one to admit that we have made pickles that have been horrible. And so that's why things like the cauliflower stem pickles are great, because you're not buying a bunch of ingredients and wasting them. You're using things that you already have.
And Deblov says hello.
Oh, hi. Hi to my mother. So I can see we're going to be boiling there soon. So let's quickly talk about cauliflower stems. So I've cut off all of the florets or flores, however you prefer to pronounce it, off of this cauliflower and used them in a cauliflower soup I did this week. But I saved the core or the stem because it makes an unbelievable pickle. You can also just throw this in with your cauliflower soup, totally great. But what I like to do is just, again, I'm gonna slice some of these bigger arms off. That's fine, actually. And then again, just slice it pretty thin, no more than 1/4 inch. And you get these really cool shapes, there you can see them there, of pickles that just are really unique. And then the magic that will happen is, because we're gonna pickle them in turmeric, they're gonna turn this neon yellow color that's really awesome. And these are awesome for like cheese boards, these pickles especially. I'm just turning this on its side to get some smaller pickles so they fit nicely on a little cracker. And then you can, as I mentioned before, you can do this in any sort of heat-safe container. So if you have like one of those to-go deli cups, where have I got some here? Like these, like, you know, plastic containers, totally go for it. Just whatever you have, as long as it can take the shock of heat. This is almost boiled now, getting close. Just enough time to finish cutting our cauliflower. So we've done, I've done a few of these pickling webinars since the pandemic started. And I'm always really interested to know if anybody is actually pickling along with me right now. Is anybody actually pickling?
Anybody saying that? Let's see. Well, one person wants to know, can you use any vinegar?
You can use any vinegar. And actually, it's a really good question to bring up, because when we get to the red onion pickles, we're going to use apple cider vinegar, which is much sweeter than most vinegars. And because of that, we're going to use a lot less sugar, about half the sugar, because you already have a pretty high sugar content in the vinegar itself. White wine is still pretty plain, so you don't, you just want to treat it as a regular vinegar. You can use distilled red wine, champagne. You can infuse your own vinegars and use them for pickling. Like, really, the pickling vinegar world is your oyster. So I'm just gonna shove all these. Ooh, this one's a little thick. Is that another?
Someone else is asking, for all quick pickling, is it best to cut the vegetables regardless of the type as thin as possible, whatever it is?
Yeah, yes. I'm interested to know if there's a specific example that you're thinking of. Yes.
Okay. No, there's no, she didn't mention a particular type of vegetable, but maybe she'll respond. Lauren.
Ah, Lauren.
You know Lauren?
Lauren's actually, I mean, if it's the Lauren I'm thinking of, she's tuning in all the way from Chicago.
Lauren Pearson?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so we've got all of our cauliflower in our jar. Our pickling liquid is ready. It's boiling, as you can see from the steam. If you have a cold, this is a phenomenal activity. It will clear out your sinuses like nobody's business. If you're nervous about pouring, do it over the sink. Go for it. Perfect. Like a glove. So I have a few jalapenos sticking out of my liquid. And for me, I'm sort of okay with that because I like having a little bit of like different texture and flavor. But if you really are like, I want all my pickles pickled perfectly, there's a couple of things you can do. If you're using like not so much a glass jar, but a container where you can fit another container inside with like some water in it to weigh it down, you could just weigh your vegetables under the pickling liquid. I'm gonna actually just give this a little stir so my garlic cloves get all the way in there. But this is looking good. They're pretty much all under. So the downside to using jars is that you can't always weigh it down. You can sometimes get like a plastic bag and fill it with some water and weigh it. But I always get nervous because of the heat that I don't really want to be putting plastic bags in my heat. But the positive is that if your pickling liquid is hot enough, this will actually seal itself, like can itself, because the heat and the steam are creating a vacuum. And so you can hear, so that's not sealed. You can hear that. Hopefully by the end of this, it will be sealed. But we'll just set that there. You can see. You'll also notice as this goes on that these jalapenos will darken from the vinegar, which is pretty cool too. So because we're using very similar ingredients in our cauliflower brine as we did for this one, I'm just gonna use the same pot.
Couple of questions.
Sure.
Is it okay to use a mandolin to slice?
Yes, absolutely. Just don't cut your finger off.
Right.
No responsibility for any mandolin injuries.
Right. And do you have to leave space at the top?
You do. You don't. For jars, I like to just leave about like the rim space. I don't really like to fill it up higher than that. But really the only thing you have to worry about is getting your lid on. I know for some like Tupperware and stuff that's heat safe because the lid goes below the lip a little bit. Just remember that you're gonna have to deal with that. But otherwise, no, you don't have to move any space. Should we move on to cauliflower stems?
Move on, move on.
All right, so we've got our cauliflower stems chopped. We're gonna do about a cup of vinegar for this one. And we'll add that to our pot, along with, again, a bay leaf. In this one, I've got some coriander seeds as well as some black peppercorns, some whole coriander seeds. I'll just show you if you can see. And I just really like the lemoniness of the coriander for this. It goes really well with the vinegar, with the turmeric. As I said, we're gonna use some ground turmeric. A little goes a long way on these, so I'm gonna do about a half a teaspoon. And then we're gonna do, I'm gonna do about 3 tablespoons of sugar for this one, just because we're using a little less vinegar. And again, about a teaspoon of salt. For me, a very large, like hefty pinch of salt is about a teaspoon, but that's a good thing, good trick to know as well, is about how much your pinch is. And once again, get it over a boil. Excuse me, bring it up to a boil. Give it a little whisk to dissolve. And then we're gonna be ready for our red onion pickles once this is done. So we've got our red onions that have still been sitting here. How are we looking? Okay, so I'm gonna see if I can show you this. It's a little hard to see and I unfortunately don't have any glass bowls, but you maybe can see that there's some liquid at the bottom there. See that? So those are known as onion tears, unlike the ones that come out of your face when you're cutting onions. But this is like the liquid gold part 2 of pickles. You want that liquid in your pickles. So don't like just toss it or strain it. You want everything that's in the bowl to go into your jar. So we've got one more jar here. And I'm just gonna stuff these guys in. I had a pretty large red onion. So I'm hoping it all fits in here, but if not, throw it on a sandwich. And that's the great thing about pickles too, is because you're using such thinly sliced vegetables, if you have any extras, just, you have a snack. So, that's already starting to come up to a simmer. We're getting close. But again, just I'm going to keep saying it over and over and over, that what we're doing essentially is creating a lot of surface area for our pickling brine to do its magic. That's why we're slicing it thin. There's a lot of surfaces in here now, as opposed to like one large surface of a cucumber. So you're creating a lot of surface area, and you're also slicing it thin to help the process move along faster. And what that process is essentially a curative process. So you're using salt and sugar to draw out the water content in the vegetable, and then the heat helped force the brine into the vegetable to take the place of the water content you drew out. So I've got a little too many red onions for this, but again, do not waste that beautiful onion tear juice. Get that all in there. Meanwhile, our other pickling liquid is ready. And this one I am gonna do over the sink, because if I get this everywhere, I'll be sad. Because again, turmeric stains everything neon yellow. So I'm gonna do this one over the sink. Woohoo! All right.
So Casey,
Yeah.
somebody asked, I was told to hit the bottom of the jar a few times after screwing on the top to force the air to the top of the jar. Does this make sense?
It totally does. I knew that with this one, that they were gonna, you can see they're floating now, they're starting to change color. So I know with this one that the air bubbles don't really get trapped. But you totally beat me to the punch, because what I was gonna say for the cauliflower is because of the shapes, air tends to get trapped. So you're absolutely right. Once the lid is on, carefully, because remember this is hot, just give it a few taps, and you can see the bubbles rise up. And you can just do it a few times. You can give a little jiggle and do it again. And there you go. Cauliflower stem pickles. How about that? All right, we've got one more pickle to go, which again is the red onion pickles, which are slightly different just because we gave them sort of a pre-cure before we're pickling them. And again, what that does is just help it start to break down. Onions are definitely tough and they're very acidic. I don't know if you know this as a culinary fact, but acid and salt balance each other out. So if you ever add too much vinegar or like lemon juice or something to a dish, you can balance that with salt. Same goes the other way. If you add too much salt to something, you can add a little bit of lemon juice. It will help balance out the saltiness. So that also helps with onions too, that by adding some salt, we're starting to break down the acids or like the acidic flavor in the onions. Another good tip for just if you want raw onions is, and they're too like overpoweringly acidic, is just soak them in some cold water, and that also helps leach out some of the like tannic acidity in them. So we've got our red onions with all here. Now you can see much better probably. The liquid in the bottom. Yeah, that's the good stuff. All right, so we'll do one more brine. And again, so this one's going to be a little bit different. I'm going to use apple cider vinegar. And because apple cider vinegar is sweeter, remember, we're going to use a little bit less sugar to just balance it out. Now, if you want sweet pickles, which is another thing that I do, you can just keep the sugar level the same. You can do baking spices, and that's a really cool addition as well. Sweet pickles are great. They are phenomenal with goat cheese, especially some Catapano goat cheese, especially. But so for the apple cider vinegar, as I said, we're going to use a little bit less sugar because it's already sweet. I would say the same thing goes for like malt vinegar. If you're using malt vinegar for something, that's pretty sweet too. Any fruity vinegars, totally go for pickling with them, but again, use a little less sugar. And I think there was like a sort of a very generic shopping list that maybe went out with this. It's sort of you always just need like a balance of vinegar, salt, sugar, spices, herbs. I'm not doing anything with fresh herbs today, but you can totally use them. It's a really cool flavor. But yeah, so we've got our red onions, apple cider vinegar. Again, I'm going to do about a cup because that worked perfectly for the cauliflower stem volume. Ooh. Wrong lid. And for these, I've got another bay leaf. I've got a new pot, so I've got a bay leaf. I've got a bit more peppercorns, and I did a little peppercorn medley for this one, so it's got pink, white, green, and black peppercorns in it, and I did about a teaspoon. I'm going to do another couple of garlic cloves. I also like adding mustard seeds to my pickled onions. I'm not going to do that today, but it's great because then you end up with some pickled mustard seeds as well, which is always delicious. So a bay leaf, a couple of garlic cloves, about a tablespoon of peppercorns. We need our about 2 tablespoons of sugar. Let's do 1.5. And again, not a teaspoon of salt, because we did a teaspoon of salt. I just like to add an extra pinch just to help the brine come together a little bit. And then our apple cider vinegar. Once again, let's go to the stove. And again, give it a little whisk to help dissolve the sugar and the salt. And all our slicing is done. So we clean as we go. And are there any questions while our last brine comes to a boil?
Right. We want to know, somebody asked how much turmeric. I believe you said
About half a teaspoon.
half teaspoon.
A little goes a long way.
And how long do the pickles last in the fridge?
Forever. That's one of the best parts about this is the chances are you will finish the pickles before they go bad. But that brings up a good point, which is if your pickles are not sealed, if they're just in a container, they need to go in the fridge as soon as they're cooled. Even if they're in a jar, as soon as the glass is cooled, I like to just check. If they're sealed, fine, I'll leave them like in a cupboard, like cool cupboard for a couple of months. But really quick pickles should live in the fridge. Once they're in the fridge, they really will last like a year.
Great.
Yeah.
Let's see, we got any other questions? Somebody asked something about baby pickles.
Baby pickles.
It's like cornichon, maybe.
Oh, yeah.
Would you quick pickle those, or would you still want to slice them up?
If you find tiny cornichons, let me know where you're getting them. That sounds awesome. Those are pretty small. I would feel fine with quick pickling them. I would maybe add a little extra salt. It also brings up an interesting point, which is the addition of water. If you look up some quick pickling recipes, a lot of them will add water to the brine. And it's usually about like a 3-to-1 vinegar to water ratio. I don't like adding water to my pickles. I use the brine in so many other things that I really like the punch of flavor that you get without water. But cucumbers are the one thing that I have an exception with because they are so much water content that if you add straight vinegar to them as a pickle, they will just be too pickly. Even for me, even for my husband, who's the king of pickles, they're just a little too sour. Even like, and I love sour pickles, but they're just too much. So for cucumbers, so cornichons, I would add about like a 1/4 cup of water. If you're doing about a cup of vinegar, add in about a 1/3 of a cup of water. Just give it a little balance. Also, I haven't shown you this, but you can taste your brines and see like what they actually taste like. I would do it before it heats up too much. Mine's already almost at a boil, or I would do it for you. Again, great cold remedy. But what's so cool about this is that with these you're essentially infusing vinegars at the same time as you're pickling your vegetables. So like one of the things I have, if I can get my fridge open, is I actually made beet pickles about a year ago. And when we finished them, I reduced the pickling liquid into this like syrup. And it's almost like it's a little thinner than a balsamic glaze, but we use it in the same way. And it's got this warm flavor from the beets while also still having that balsamic glaze flavor. Super cool. Great on a caprese. You can do it with like I would do it with this, the onion pickling liquid for sure. You could reduce it down. It could be really interesting. But again, we honestly just usually throw it into vinaigrettes. Anytime we have a salad, we always use pickling liquid. You can use it also to deglaze for like stews and things. Instead of using white wine, you can want a little bit of an extra punch of flavor. You can use one of your pickling liquids to deglaze your pan. Whoop, and we're boiling. So last one right over the top. And I had a little bit extra. But again, just lid on and give it a couple of taps. For sure, I can see all the air bubbles trapped. Wiggle. And if you do have them, if they do end up sealed, you can give them a little like up and down once they're cool to help as well. But you can see how much the color is already changing to that really bright pink. It's not too hot. But the color's changing really fast. It's all the acid that does that, which is really cool. With these, I think you can see that the cauliflower already is like this neon color, really cool. And as I said, the jalapenos have already darkened. Well, there's not much light. Hold on, let me help you see. Ta-da! Jalapenos have already darkened into sort of like oh, see, there's like one bright green spot right there. Must have got trapped in an air bubble. Just give it a little wiggle. Yeah. So there you go. There's 3 kinds of pickles, quick pickles. As I said, as soon as these cool down, they're ready to eat. They're pickled, they're happy. Just throw them in the fridge, eat them with everything. Yeah, any more questions?
A couple more. Can you do this with green tomatoes?
You totally can do this with green tomatoes. I actually was trying to find some green tomatoes for this and I just couldn't get them today, but you can absolutely do this with green tomatoes. Watermelon rind is really cool too, though it's a little bit harder because you have to chop all the green off and all the pink off and just try to get the white bit in between. I was also trying to find some unripe peaches to do, but all the peaches are beautiful and ripe right now. Anything that's like has some, like that's hard, it shouldn't be soft. Crisp, that's the word I'm looking for. Anything that's like crisp, like squash, unripe fruit, green tomatoes, those work phenomenally as pickles. But again, just think about the sugar content. If you're using something very sweet, maybe don't add so much sugar. Unless you really want a sweet pickle, then add all the sugar you want. Yeah, this is really just for you to understand, like, now go off and pickle. Yeah, any other questions?
Does Casey have an Instagram account or a website with her recipes?
I have an Instagram account. It is Casey_corn. The photo is basically me doing this, so you'll know, but with no hat on. And I do technically, yes, have a website with recipes, is currently under construction, but coming back soon. There is my sweet pickled squash recipe that is on there or will be available to you soon. I also, on a different note, mac and cheese is one of my specialties, and I'll be releasing a mac and cheese cookbook in the next couple of months, so stay tuned for that as well. Yeah, but there's also the same sweet pickled squash recipe is on Tastemade. You can Google that, like Casey Corn, Tastemade pickled squash. It should come up, the video with the recipe. I don't think I have any other pickle recipes on video, but I do have more of the ingredient lists is in my highlights on my Insta stories. So if you didn't get the ingredient list or you need to see it again, it's actually in that first highlight on my Instagram stories. So it says pickling class and you can just click right on it.
If anybody didn't download the list that you sent us, they're available on the Foodie Tour website. So that'll still be there. And it's caseycorn.com, right? CaseyCorn.com is, you can see videos of me and stuff. My actual website is IamTheCornivore.com. As I said, it is under construction, so please be friendly to me, because it's definitely a work in progress and not working right now. But I am the Cornivore, like carnivore, but corn, since my last name's Corn. That's my website where you will be able to find all my recipes. Instagram still, though, is the best place to find me, Casey_corn. Yeah. Okay, and let's see if you've got any more questions here. Okay, can you use plain white vinegar? Yes. Okay, what seasoning do you recommend for pickling radishes? Ooh, so many things. I like using rice wine vinegar for radishes because I like doing them more Asian-y. Sometimes I add a couple scallions to them too, so they get a little more onion flavor. Black sesame seeds are really cool. I also like adding pastes to my radishes, like umeboshi paste, which is like a pickled Japanese plum, or like even yuzu is really good in radish pickles. Yeah, turmeric works great as well. I like brighter flavors because, again, radishes are pretty peppery. So something to balance out that pepperiness. Can you actually give these as gifts? Yeah, totally. Absolutely. And do you put the bay leaf in the jar? Yes. Yes. Okay. Yeah, let all that goodness and marinate and flavor. As this sits here, it will just keep taking on the flavors. So if you're like, wow, I put in way too much spice into my brine and I don't know what to do, just strain it right in here and get rid of some of that spice, because a lot of the flavor will already come out from the boiling. Okay. Cool. Great, Casey. It's fascinating and I can't wait to try it. Yay! Thanks, everyone. So if you all enjoyed this, we hope that you will come back to the Foodie Tour website, which will continue to be on for another year, and we hope to be adding new content to it from time to time. And if you've enjoyed this, we would definitely appreciate a contribution. And you can do that on the Foodie Tour website as well. So thanks so much, Casey.
Thanks, Ellen. Thanks, everyone. Really had fun.